We live inside an invisible construction, a world that is not exactly out there, but also not entirely within. A place where thoughts take form and become landscapes, where beliefs become walls and fears create the ceilings that limit us. This silent structure is the human mind, and it is within it that the true matrix exists. From an early age, we learn to name, to label, to organize. This is good, that is bad, this is right, that is wrong. But who created these criteria? Where did these concepts come from that guide our choices like invisible tracks? The mind is a brilliant tool, but it can also be a brilliant prison. And the strangest part, most people go their whole lives without realizing they're imprisoned. Just like in the movie The Matrix, where bodies are inside pods connected to a simulated reality, in real life there are no visible cables or machines. The prison is mental, built with ideas, expectations, inherited fears, cultural conditioning, and a worldview that was never truly questioned. You wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, pay your bills, enjoy your weekend, and repeat. And deep down, there's a sense that something is off. As if there's a deeper truth no one is saying. As if you're living in a fabricated, plasticized reality far from your essence. And you are. Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And the society we live in feeds on forgetfulness. We have forgotten nature. We've forgotten silence. We've forgotten the body. We've forgotten to look each other in the eye, to walk barefoot, to feel the wind. The modern matrix is made of concrete, algorithms, and distraction. And the mind, which could be an instrument of clarity, has become a factory of problems, comparison, and anxiety." Everything starts in the mind, because it is the mind that interprets the world. If your mind is at war, the world is at war. If your mind is at peace, the world feels lighter. Osho said the mind is not something you have, but something you are using, or being used by. Most people live under the rule of the conditioned mind. They don't have thoughts. They are being thought by thoughts. Looking at human history, we see the mind has created everything: religions, empires, wars, technologies, philosophies. But it has also created separation, ego, greed, suffering. Every time a human being fully identifies with their thoughts, a new layer of the matrix is born. The mind becomes the world, and the world becomes a mirror of the mind. Our era is marked by a frantic acceleration. Everything has to be for yesterday. We live rushing, accumulating, competing. Capitalism has turned the planet into a field of extraction and consumption, where nature is seen as a resource, and the human being as a productivity machine. Wars continue, albeit with different costumes. Now the battles are fought in data, on screens, in narratives, but the root is the same: separation, fear, control. Eckhart Tolle speaks of the pain body, an energetic field that feeds on suffering. The mind, when identified with this pain body, lives in a constant state of reactivity, attachment to the past, and fear of the future. In this way, the matrix is reinforced. You think you're choosing, but you're only repeating patterns. The matrix isn't a system controlling the mind, it is the mind, disconnected from the now. There is a way out, but it's not external, it's internal. The exit door is the same as the entrance, awareness. When you observe thoughts instead of believing them, when you feel the emotion instead of sinking into it, when you breathe and return to the now. In that moment, a crack appears in the wall of the matrix, and through it, light enters. The mind creates a parallel world because it cannot live the real without interpreting it. The real is silent, simple, direct, but the mind dresses it in stories, justifications, memories, judgments. That's why, when you are present, the mind quiets. And when it quiets, the real shows itself, not as an idea, but as a living presence. Religions around the world have pointed to this, though many have gotten lost in symbols, doctrines, belief systems. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Buddha spoke of liberation from suffering through mindfulness. The Sufi mystics danced to leave the mind and merge with divine love. They were all pointing to the same truth. The matrix is the illusion of separation. The truth is unity. The first step is questioning. Ask yourself, what in me is real? What in me is learned? What am I feeling right now? What am I trying to avoid? And then, just see. See deeply. Don't seek ready-made answers. Just look. Because to see is the beginning of awakening, and awakening is the collapse of the matrix. The collapse of the matrix is not a violent event. It doesn't require a revolution in the streets or a sudden awakening of the masses. It begins in silence. It begins in a breath. It begins the moment you stop chasing and start noticing. Have you ever watched a thought arise, like a cloud in the sky, and simply let it pass? That moment right there is a crack in the illusion, because the matrix thrives on identification. It needs you to believe that you are your thoughts, your roles, your fears, your story. When you stop believing, the game changes. When you stop reacting, the system loses power. When you become the witness, you step outside the code. In many ancient traditions, this was called seeing through the veil. The veil is nothing more than your own mind, dressed in layers of history, trauma, culture, and repetition. You were not born into the matrix, you were programmed into it. And the programming began with language, with comparison, with shame and reward. You learned what was acceptable, what was desirable, what was forbidden. And slowly, a second world was built inside you, a world of shoulds, of musts, of what will they think. That is the parallel world. That is the matrix. The system around us reflects this inner structure. We live in economies that thrive on our discontent. Algorithms feed on our anxiety. Politicians rise on the waves of our division. The media sells us stories of danger and success to keep the illusion spinning. And we participate, willingly, unconsciously, day after day. We scroll, we compare, we consume, we project, we judge, and in doing so, we deepen the illusion that this is real life. But there is another dimension, one that cannot be touched by the noise, a space within where nothing is missing, because everything already is. That space is your original nature, and it has always been here. Imagine this. If you woke up tomorrow and all your memories were gone, who would you be? If you had no name, no past, no identity, what would remain? That essence is not the self that society taught you to be. It is not the successful one, the broken one, the spiritual one. It is simply awareness, and awareness is beyond the matrix. Osho said that freedom is not something to be achieved. It is something to be realized. You are already free. You've just forgotten. You've become so entangled in your thoughts, in your image, in your plans and regrets, that you've lost the still point. And that stillness, that presence, is the doorway out. The ego does not want this. It wants to keep spinning stories, building castles in the sky, defending illusions, because without your belief, the ego dissolves, and that feels like death to it. That's why awakening is often described as a kind of dying, not of the body, but of the false self. In the world we've created, we fear stillness. We fill every moment with noise, with distraction, with productivity. We believe that if we stop, we will collapse. But in truth, it is in stopping that we begin to see. Silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is the fertile ground where real insight can grow. The modern world is structured to prevent this silence. The endless news cycles, the notifications, the economic pressure, the glorification of busyness, all of it is part of the same machine. A machine designed to keep us from remembering who we are. And yet, even within this chaos, there are moments of grace. A sunset that silences the mind, a child's laughter that brings us back to presence, a deep breath that opens a window in our chest. These are not accidents. These are invitations. The earth is still whispering to us, through the wind in the trees, through the rhythm of the ocean, through the soil under our feet. But we have covered our ears with cement. We no longer walk with the earth. We walk on it as if it were separate. But we are not separate. We never were. Krishnamurti often spoke of choiceless awareness, the ability to see without judging, without choosing, just seeing. That kind of vision is rare in a world addicted to control, but it is in that neutral seeing that freedom begins. Because once you see the program, you are no longer controlled by it. We need new myths, new visions, not based on domination but on connection, not based on competition but on collaboration. The old stories are dying. The story of the isolated individual, the endless pursuit of more, the glorification of power, they are unsustainable. They lead to burnout, to emptiness, to collapse. And the collapse is happening, not just externally, but internally. More and more people are waking up with the question, what am I doing with my life? Why am I still feeling empty, even after achieving what I was told would make me happy? This question is the seed of awakening. You do not need to escape the world. You need to see it clearly. You need to unlearn, to sit, to breathe, to feel, to remember. The Matrix was never real. It was only a reflection of your belief. And belief can be withdrawn. That is your power. That is your freedom. The unraveling of the Matrix doesn't happen all at once. It's not a dramatic revelation. It's a gentle peeling back, a return, a remembering. Piece by piece, illusion by illusion, the veil thins. You may still live in the same house, do the same job, talk to the same people, but something in you shifts. A deeper awareness begins to shine through. You hear your thoughts, but you're no longer caught in their web. You feel emotions, but they no longer define you. You move through the world, but it's no longer through the lens of survival or fear. This is the beginning of a new inner architecture, one not built from comparison, trauma, or validation, but from stillness, clarity, and truth. Modern culture has taught us that healing is becoming better, becoming more, but real healing is unbecoming. Unbecoming all the versions of yourself that were built to be loved. Unbecoming the masks you put on to feel safe. Unbecoming the performance. Only then can your essence breathe freely again. We are so used to effort that the idea of simply being feels foreign. But being is not passive. It is radically alive. It is the state in which life flows through you, unblocked, undistorted. You're no longer trying to do life. You become the space through which life moves. This is what ancient mystics pointed to when they spoke of surrender. Not giving up, but giving in. Letting go of the illusion of control. Trusting the intelligence of life itself. Trusting that you don't need to hold everything together because you were never the one holding it. Eckhart Tolle teaches that presence is the end of suffering, not because pain disappears, but because resistance to pain dissolves. The mind says, I don't want this. Awareness says, this is. And in that acceptance, suffering begins to soften. The world doesn't have to change for you to be free. You change your relationship with the world, and that changes everything. The Matrix depends on you forgetting this. It depends on your fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected, fear of losing control, and it offers endless distractions to keep those fears alive. Status, followers, achievements, approval. The game is rigged. But when you see the game, you're no longer a pawn in it. The capitalist dream tells us that happiness is at the end of effort. Work hard enough and you'll get there. Buy the right things, look the right way, build the right life, and maybe you'll finally be fulfilled. But fulfillment isn't a place, it's a state of being. It arises when you are whole, not when your conditions are perfect. This truth terrifies the Matrix because a whole person is not easily manipulated. A person rooted in presence doesn't need to consume endlessly. They don't need to prove themselves. They don't need to escape. They are enough as they are, and that is the most subversive thing in the modern world. Wholeness comes when you reclaim the parts of yourself you were taught to hide. The sadness, the doubt, the softness, the anger. You look at these pieces not as flaws to fix, but as messages to listen to. Each one carries a truth, and when you listen, you begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. This remembrance doesn't come from the intellect, it comes from the body, from the breath, from the silence between your thoughts. That's why spiritual awakening is not about adding more, it's about simplifying, stripping away what's not real until what remains is undeniable. Many traditions have mapped this territory. The Tao speaks of the uncarved block, the natural, effortless essence. The Gnostics spoke of gnosis, inner knowing beyond belief. Indigenous cultures speak of walking in balance, in right relation with the earth and with all beings. These are not just poetic ideas, they are keys, because the matrix is not just mental. It's also ecological. We've built a world that extracts and exploits because our minds have been trained to do the same. We extract from ourselves, from each other, from the planet, always chasing, never arriving. But what if arriving is already possible right here, right now? To exit the matrix is to slow down, to listen, to see with new eyes, to stop outsourcing your truth, to stop giving your power to systems that do not honor life. Your intuition is not irrational, it is ancient. Your heart is not naive, it is wise. Your stillness is not laziness, it is medicine. And the moment you trust these parts of yourself again, you begin to download a new reality. A reality where connection replaces consumption, where presence replaces performance, where being replaces becoming. This isn't about going back to the past. It's about going forward into a deeper now. A now that includes the earth, the soul, the mystery. You don't need to escape society. You just need to stop letting it define you. Be in the world, but not of it. Touch the matrix, but don't become it. Move through the noise, but stay anchored in silence. That is how you walk free. The world is addicted to narratives, stories, labels, definitions, and yet the truth of who you are cannot be contained in any of them. The moment you name it, it slips through your fingers. The moment you try to capture it, it hides. Because you are not a concept. You are not an idea. You are not even someone. You are this moment, alive, aware, ever-changing. And yet, from the moment we are born, we are given names, roles, and expectations. Be good, be smart, be strong, be successful. And we carry those scripts like armor, forgetting that they were never ours to begin with. We wear them to feel safe, to be seen, but in the process, we forget how to feel. We numb ourselves with ambition, with comparison, with busyness. The Matrix teaches us that to be still is to be lazy, that to feel deeply is to be weak, that to question is to be dangerous. And so we build walls inside ourselves. We become strangers to our own soul. But here's the truth. Your essence does not need to be fixed. It needs to be remembered. Underneath the stories, the wounds, the conditioning, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are buried beneath decades of programming, layers of social roles, traumas passed down like heirlooms, expectations dressed as dreams. But when you pause, when you breathe, when you allow yourself to be without performing, something ancient wakes up, something unnameable. The system cannot touch this part of you. It can only distract you from it. That's why the Matrix fears your stillness, because stillness is where clarity lives, and clarity is power. True power doesn't scream, it doesn't dominate, it doesn't manipulate. True power is soft, quiet, rooted. It flows from presence, not ego, and the world has forgotten it because it cannot be sold. The capitalist engine thrives on your sense of lack. You're not enough. You don't have enough. You're not doing enough, and so you keep chasing, working harder, buying more, seeking approval. But what if the thing you're searching for can't be found out there? What if it's already within you, hidden beneath the noise? This is not an abstract idea, it is a lived experience. The experience of waking up in your body and realizing you are not your thoughts, that your mind is just one instrument of perception and not always the wisest one. The heart knows in silence what the mind can't explain. The body remembers what the intellect has forgotten. The soul speaks in symbols, in dreams, in subtle feelings that don't fit into logic. And if you stop long enough to listen, you'll hear it. You'll hear the earth humming beneath your feet. You'll feel the sky breathing with you. You'll sense the intelligence in every leaf, every breeze, every heartbeat. And suddenly, the world is no longer a machine. It's a mystery, a mirror, a living poem. Krishnamurti once said that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. What if your anxiety is not a problem, but a signal? What if your sadness is not a weakness, but a teacher? What if your sensitivity is not a curse, but a gift? The Matrix would have you believe otherwise, because an awakened person cannot be controlled. They don't obey blindly, they don't consume blindly, they don't vote blindly. They feel, they see, they choose. And choosing is dangerous to systems that depend on unconscious repetition. We are entering a time of breakdown and breakthrough. Old structures are collapsing, economies, institutions, ideologies, and in their place, something new is emerging. But the new will not come from fear, it will come from truth. Your inner work is not separate from the world's transformation. Every time you heal, you soften the collective field. Every time you become more conscious, you shift the whole. This is not spiritual fantasy, it's resonance, energy, reality. You are not alone in this awakening. All over the world, others are feeling it too. The quiet rebellion of the soul, the return to simplicity, the longing for something real. We may be scattered, but we are connected. This is the revolution, not one of guns, but of hearts. Not of power, but of presence. Not of conquest, but of communion. And it starts with you. Here, now. Not with doing more, but with being more aware of what you are doing. Not with fixing yourself, but with loving what you find inside. Not with fighting the system, but with no longer feeding it. In ways the Matrix can never understand. You don't have to change everything. Just change your relationship to everything. Begin there. What if the Matrix isn't something built around us, but something built within us? Not metal and wires, but beliefs, thought loops, unquestioned assumptions. The inherited architecture of fear, shame, and separation. Not a prison of steel, but a prison of perception. The matrix is the voice that says, you're only worthy if you succeed. It's the echo that whispers, you must prove yourself to be loved. It's the pattern that repeats, you're not safe unless you're in control. These voices don't come from your essence. They were installed slowly, repeatedly, through school, through media, through culture, through well-meaning parents who were trapped in the same loop. So, it becomes normal, familiar, invisible. But normal doesn't mean true. You can live your whole life reacting to a script that isn't yours, chasing a version of success that doesn't fulfill you, performing roles that don't reflect your soul, smiling while something inside you screams, there has to be more than this. And there is, but it's not more in the way you were taught. It's not louder, faster, richer. It's deeper, slower, quieter, more honest. To access it, you must become still enough to feel what's real. You must risk the silence. Risk not knowing, risk being misunderstood, because the path back to truth is rarely popular, but it is always alive. Osho taught that the real revolution begins within, not by fighting the outer world, but by no longer being at war with yourself. He said, you're not here to fulfill anyone's expectations. You are here to be yourself. And yet, most people don't even know what that self is, because they've never been given permission to explore it. But now you do. You don't need to earn your right to exist. You are existence experiencing itself. You don't need to justify your being. You are being. You are the breath behind the thoughts, the witness behind the mask, the presence behind the story. And when you touch that space, even for a moment, something shifts. Your heartbeat slows, your mind softens, your eyes open, and you realize the matrix is only real as long as you believe in it. You begin to see the signs, the artificial smiles, the empty ambitions, the endless scrolling, the subtle violence of normal life. And instead of judging it, you just don't participate anymore. You choose differently, freely. This is not escape, it's embodiment. You come back to life, back to your senses, back to the rawness of being human. And from this grounded place, you begin to build something new, not from fear, but from love. Love is not the romantic fantasy we were sold. Love is presence, attention, truth. It's how the universe communicates, how healing happens, how the real world, not the simulated one, comes into focus. And love begins with awareness, with seeing clearly. Not turning away from pain, but holding it with gentleness. Not bypassing discomfort, but listening to it. Not fixing others, but witnessing them without trying to change them. In a world addicted to urgency, love is slow. In a world obsessed with productivity, love is patient. In a world numbed by distraction, love is awake. Awakening is not a destination, it's a rhythm, a remembering, a falling asleep and waking up again and again. And each time, the illusion fades just a little more. Each time, you touch the ground of your being a little deeper. You don't become enlightened, you become real. And in a world of masks, that is the most radical act of all. So walk gently, speak truthfully, listen deeply, rest often. There is no rush. The soul doesn't move in straight lines. It spirals, expands, doubles back. It learns through contrast, through surrender, through the quiet miracle of everyday life. And as you walk this path, not away from the matrix but through it, you become a portal, a crack in the wall, a reminder to others that something else is possible, that something else has always been possible. Because the matrix is not the final truth, it's the final test, and the key to passing it is remembering who you are without it. The matrix isn't just a system, it's a state of mind. It's the voice that tells you you're not enough, the pressure to produce, the fear of stopping. It's the invisible current pulling you toward constant distraction because presence would be too revolutionary. This isn't fiction, this is conditioning. The world we live in rewards conformity, not consciousness. It celebrates busyness, not being. So we adapt. We create digital selves, perform curated lives, build identities that make sense to the system, even if they make no sense to our soul. But deep inside, something resists. That subtle ache you feel when the noise fades, that's your soul remembering. That's the part of you that knows this isn't all there is. Eckhart Tolle says, the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. The matrix doesn't need to change your reality. It just needs to control the way you think about it. It programs fear where there should be freedom, doubt where there should be trust, separation where there was once oneness. And the moment you believe it, you become a prisoner of your own mind. But here's the truth. You're not broken. You're buried under layers of roles, expectations, beliefs you never chose. And every time you slow down, every time you breathe with awareness, every time you question the script, you're digging your way out. You don't need to fight the matrix. You just need to stop feeding it. Refuse to rush, refuse to numb, refuse to be disconnected from your body, your breath, your being. That is the rebellion. That is the revolution. Because this world doesn't need more content. It needs more consciousness. Krishnamurti once said, "Truth is a pathless land. It cannot be found in systems. It cannot be owned, sold, or taught. It can only be lived through direct experience." And that experience begins the moment you stop looking outside for what was always within. The matrix thrives on your disconnection, so return to the root, to nature, to stillness, to community, to the rhythm of your own heart. Feel the soil, feel the silence, feel the sacred pulse of life underneath the performance. Osho reminds us, the mind has a very limited vision. The heart has a vast, unlimited sky. And maybe that's the shift, moving from mind to heart, from fear to trust, from illusion to intimacy. This isn't about escaping the world, it's about seeing it clearly. It's about removing the veil that separates you from the now, from the real, from the whole. Because once you remember that you are the sky, not the storm, everything changes. You stop reacting, you start responding, you stop surviving, you start creating. And in that presence, the matrix loses its grip, not because it disappears, but because you're no longer available for illusion. You're no longer seduced by the script. You've become the observer, the still point, the light that sees through the lie. This is how freedom begins. Not in the overthrow of power, but in the quiet reclaiming of self, one breath at a time. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to remember who you are beneath the noise, beneath the programming, beneath the roles you play to survive a world that forgot how to feel. Because when you were born, you knew. You knew what joy was without a reason. You knew how to trust, how to rest, how to be. But slowly you were taught otherwise. Taught that love must be earned, that silence is uncomfortable, that imagination is impractical. You were taught to adapt, to perform, to forget, but the forgetting didn't erase the truth, it only buried it. And now, in moments of stillness, between the distractions, you feel it again. A subtle ache, a quiet knowing, the call to wake up. Not to become someone new, but to return to the one you've always been. That's the paradox of awakening. It doesn't add, it subtracts. It peels away the false, the forced, the conditioned. And in the absence of illusion, reality reveals itself. And it's breathtaking. Reality is not what you see on screens. It's not the filtered version of life that's been curated for clicks. It's not the constant stream of data that floods your senses, but leaves your soul starving. Reality is in the unspoken, in the in-between, in the way your chest rises when you breathe deeply, in the way a stranger's eyes soften when you smile with sincerity, in the way trees keep growing, even when no one is watching. This is the world that matters, the one that capitalism can't monetize, the one that the Matrix can't replicate, because it is alive. Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." And yet, that's what most are striving for: adjustment, acceptance, normalcy. But what if normal is the illness? Normal is working jobs you hate to buy things you don't need. Normal is suppressing emotions to maintain appearances. Normal is numbing out instead of healing in. Normal is living in fear while pretending to be in control. To awaken is to reject that normal, not with anger but with awareness. You begin to notice the cost of convenience, the emptiness of endless stimulation, the disconnection hidden behind every scroll, every sale, every story. And in that noticing, something opens. A crack, a breath, a question. What if there's another way? Not an escape, but a return, a reconnection to the earth, to your body, to community, to the sacred in the simple. This is not utopia, it is remembering how to live. To live slowly, honestly, embodied, rooted in something deeper than approval, guided by something older than thought, that something is already inside you. It shows up in intuition, in awe, in the peace you feel when you're alone in nature. It shows up when you cry without shame, when you dance without reason, when you speak from the center of your being, not the scripts you've learned. You don't need to fix the world before you feel whole. Wholeness is not a reward. It's a state of being, a remembrance that you are the world. You are the forest, the flame, the wave, and the shore. You are not separate from this life. You are life. And that truth cannot be downloaded. It must be lived, slowly, imperfectly, authentically. And when you live from that place, the matrix becomes irrelevant, because you're no longer trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. You're writing a new story, one breath, one choice, one sacred moment at a time. There is no awakening without grief, because to awaken is to feel everything you once avoided, to touch the sorrow of the world, to see the violence hidden in convenience, the loneliness beneath the noise, the cost of the comforts you were told to crave. You begin to notice the children behind the factories, the forests behind the phones, the silence behind someone's forced smile. And suddenly, the matrix isn't just an idea, it's a wound we carry together. And so the path of consciousness is not always light. Sometimes it's heavy, sacredly heavy, because when you stop numbing, you start remembering, and remembrance is not clean. It's wild, it's honest, it breaks the surface. And in that breaking, something deeper is born. The illusion taught you to rise above, but real healing invites you to sink into the body, into the pain, into the parts of you you were taught to reject, because the only way out is through. This is the difference between escape and embodiment. Escaping says, go higher. Embodiment says, go deeper. Escape sells you comfort. Embodiment brings you truth. And truth is not always easy, but it's always freeing. Because in truth, you begin to feel your feet on the earth again. You begin to feel your breath, not as survival, but as ceremony. You start to realize this moment is enough, not because it's perfect, but because you are present. Presence dissolves illusion, not through force, but through awareness. Awareness sees the matrix for what it is, a beautiful lie. And lies only have power when you believe them. So what happens when you stop believing? You stop rushing, you stop performing, you stop proving, you start listening, you start resting, you start reclaiming your natural rhythm, a rhythm slower than society allows, more intuitive than strategy, more soulful than success. This is how we return. Not to a past version of humanity, but to a deeper version of ourselves, one that remembers interconnection, one that honors mystery, one that doesn't need to control life to trust it. Because control is the currency of the matrix. Let go of control and you break its economy. You stop trying to manipulate your emotions. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You let things breathe. You let things be. And in that space, life starts speaking again. Not through algorithms, but through trees, through silence, through synchronicity, through dreams. This is the language of the real, and the real doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be experienced. That's why awakening is not something you talk about. It's something you become, through your choices, through your energy, through your attention. Every time you choose depth over distraction, you unplug. Every time you choose connection over comparison, you awaken. Every time you say no to the noise and yes to your soul, you return to the world that was waiting beneath the world. The real world, the one made of breath and soil and tears and stars. And when you remember that world, you remember yourself. You don't need to convince anyone. Awakening isn't a debate. It's not about being right. It's about being real. The matrix thrives on argument. It wants you polarized, reactive, fragmented, because divided minds are easier to control. Divided hearts are easier to distract. But awakening doesn't argue. It observes. It doesn't shout. It listens. It doesn't demand proof. It feels truth. And that's what changes everything. Because once you stop outsourcing your knowing, once you stop needing someone else to validate what you feel, you become sovereign. Sovereignty isn't separation. It's wholeness. It's the end of dependency on broken systems to define your worth. It's the moment you stop performing for approval and start living from essence. And essence is quiet, still, powerful beyond measure. It moves beneath the fear. It waits beneath the noise. It doesn't hustle. It radiates. This is why the awakened ones look different. They move slower. They speak with care. Their presence is their message, not their opinions, not their status, not their productivity. Their presence is the revolution, because in a world running from itself, presence is a threat. It exposes the illusion. It reveals the emperor has no clothes. that progress without purpose is just polished destruction, that a full calendar doesn't mean a full life, that consumption is not the same as connection. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. You'll walk into the same rooms, but feel the falseness. You'll hear the same conversations, but sense what's missing. You'll scroll the same screens, but your soul won't respond. Because you're tuning to a different frequency now, a frequency of depth, of honesty, of sacred simplicity. And in that simplicity, life becomes holy again. A glass of water, a breeze on your skin, the laughter of someone you love. These aren't distractions from purpose. They are the purpose. This is how we unplug, not by fleeing the world, but by reclaiming it. We make eye contact, we breathe deeply, we speak truths that liberate, we rest without guilt, we remember the medicine of slowness, the healing in silence, the brilliance of just being, and slowly the world begins to feel like home again. Not because it's fixed, but because you've come home to yourself. You've remembered the deeper rhythm, the rhythm that doesn't need permission, that doesn't need proof, that doesn't need the matrix to crumble in order to be free, because freedom is not a destination. It's your birthright. And the moment you stop searching for it outside, you realize it was always here, in your breath, in your being, in your now. And now, here you are, not at the end, but at the beginning, the real beginning, not of a new belief system, but of the unlearning, the unbecoming, the sacred return to what was always true before the world told you who to be. You don't need more information, you need integration. You don't need another system, you need stillness. The mind will try to complicate the path. It will ask for steps, techniques, guarantees, but the heart already knows, the soul already remembers. This moment is enough. Because when you stop searching, you start seeing, you see that healing was never about fixing yourself. It was about finding the courage to feel, to face, to forgive. You see that awakening was never about escaping this life, but fully inhabiting it. You see that the matrix was never a place, it was a pattern. And patterns can be broken. You break them by pausing when the world says rush, by trusting when fear says doubt, by opening when the mind says protect. You break them every time you choose presence over performance, every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you choose love over illusion. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the Matrix fears most. Not the loud ones, but the quiet ones, the ones who have remembered who they are, the ones who walk softly but carry the fire of 1,000 lifetimes in their eyes. The ones who know the real revolution is inner, because when enough people awaken inwardly, the outer world must shift. It cannot hold its old shape. It must realign, reform, remember. And this is what we came for. Not to escape this planet, but to restore it, to remember the earth as sacred, to rebuild communities from care, to create art that heals, not distracts, to build systems that serve, not extract, to live lives that reflect what we've remembered. And yes, the road is long. Yes, the illusions are deep. Yes, the noise is loud. But you are louder on the inside. You are not here to be normal. You are here to be true. So breathe, return. Unplug not with rage, but with reverence. And remember, the light at the end of the tunnel was never a place. It was always you.